Hello everybody, my name's Vic Gilgis and I'm doing another podcast for you, episode 50, called Why Worry? Now the reason I do these podcasts is to help you hopefully with your well-being and hopefully to improve my own well-being. So I'll get on with it. It's basically about the futility of worry, and I know we all worry, and I go back to when I was a young man, for example, and my father was teaching me how to drive, or trying to, and he at one stage said to me, just stop worrying. So I was driving along and I was worried about everything, as you are when you're a learner, and he just tried to explain to me, which I couldn't get at the time, was that the reason you're worrying, son, is because you're trying to think about your gears, your speed, looking at the road, handbrake, etc. You've got a million things on your mind that you're worrying about, and it's stopping you from driving, because driving will come intuitively. And that's equivalent to me saying with the worry thing, is that when we worry, we're up in our head about this, that and t'other. When in actual fact, our presence, our real self, as my father said to me, you'll get to know intuitively what to do anyway. So try and calm down about all the outside signals and what you're thinking all the time about what you're supposed to do, what you shouldn't do, and what you should do correctly. And that is equivalent to our life story, is that we are going around, excuse my voice, I've got a bit of a cold, that we are going around in our head, constantly trying to look good, feel good, be happy, not upset others, do the right thing, make enough money, appear okay, sleep enough, exercise enough, look good enough. And all these things are basically going to look after themselves anyway, because life carries on and we are part of life. And if we just dropped a lot of that, if we could, and I know it's not easy, that's why I'm doing this podcast. So I go back to the 1950s. And there was a magazine, I remember it. It was on the front was called Why Me, What Me Worry. And it was a gap-toothed, freckle-faced kid. His picture was right on the front. And I was always kind of curious about this because I read a lot of comics and I thought, what's it all about? And basically, it was the presenters of the comic trying to say that, they were looking at the times. So we think with the social media that times are terrible, but in the 1950s times were terrible, and everybody was reacting to pressures and was this going to happen and that going to happen. And then later on, if you remember, was it in the 60s, we was all going to be bombed by atomic bombs, or we were worried about that hiding under the cupboard and things like that. So there's always been worries around, and that was the context that the magazine was trying to say. It was just trying to say, be more carefree and take less seriously the pressures of modern life, all the politics, all the culture, and don't get too intellectual about this. And that's why I mentioned about all the thinking earlier. So so that's the title, is Why Worry? What Me Worry. And I think nowadays, especially, we get this with all the pressures that are going on. We need to, I don't mean this, but show in a way a kind of indifference to the pressures in the world, because the pressures can cause stress in us, and the stress in us can cause mental issues and physical issues, and we can become ill. And trying to solve all these problems is sometimes, because they're outside of us, we can't do anything about it. It can be disastrous because we feel like the victim. We maybe feel frustrated that we can't get on with things. And one of the things about, we listen to the news, and especially what's going on nowadays with the politics around the world. and we may kind of listen to all these debating problems about, question time, saying what should we do, any answers, any questions. Politicians are trying to resolve things, and so we're in with all the talking group and what have you, thinking about it intellectually. What should we do? What should we do? And in the end, as we all know, those of us who are a little bit older, is that no matter what we think or do, it never works out like that, because that's not the way it works. But we try to do our part. When I was a young man, and I think somebody noticed that I took things seriously, there was a young lady down the avenue where we lived. Excuse my cold. And she gave me a statuette. And I don't know if you can see it, but here it is. So it's this figure that is kind of a dopey looking figure trying to puzzle things out with a bit of a silly grin on his face. And it says, "Happiness is not being smart enough to know what to worry about." So I thought, she got it. She really nailed me there, and probably thought I was too smart for my own self. And what she was saying, because I remember her, Mary the Calder, she was brilliant. She didn't consider herself, in fact, she considered herself to be quite naive, but she said she got on with life and enjoyed life and could see that I was worrying about everything. So, so there you are. Push the intellect out of the way, because it'll help you stop worrying. Now, I'm trying to give you some help here, and of course myself, and looking at what my thoughts are on this. And first of all, I come up with there is a difference between a feeling and a thought. Now, what I mean by that is that when things happen in the world, the real world, so we are in that moment aware of some bad news or something we see on the TV, something we hear on the radio, or something somebody says to us in the street, and we get upset. We have a not a very good feeling. Now, it may be that we try to say to ourselves, I shouldn't let this get me down, or I shouldn't have that type of feeling, or why am I feeling guilt? Why am I feeling shame? Why am I feeling helpless? Why am I feeling angry? Why am I fearful? Now, in actual fact, I think one of the secrets here, it's not a secret, is one of the things here is not to argue with this feeling, not to push it away, because it's a natural thing. It's a direct experience that we are experiencing as to why we have these feelings. And so that is direct. It is coming to us. Some experience in the world is shown to us. It may be somebody said the wrong thing or something to us, or we're watching something that's horrific or threatening, blah, 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 and we get a feeling of upsetness, a feeling of rage, a feeling of anger, a feeling of guilt, that we can't do anything about it, or shame, whatever. Those are natural feelings, and we should always give attention to the feeling because it is natural. And if we think that we are out of order in receiving that feeling, then that's not the case. Don't block it. The feeling matters, because it is about, there is always comes with a feeling is a kind of, what can we do about this that's happening to us if it's upsetting us? And we will get a knowing of what to do intellectually. We will get a feeling of knowing what to do intuitively. Now that's different from intellectually, where thought is saying, this shouldn't be happening. Will it be happening in next year? I'm worried about, my family next year, or, will this make me ill? What can I do about this? And what I'm saying there is that these are thoughts, about that feeling, and that is a different thing. So the thoughts about the feeling, we've got to remember that thought, our mind does not know the answers to the problems, because if it knew the answers to the problems, or if the thought could block the problem, it would have done so by now. If the mind could solve our problems, it would always do so. And that's another thing, is to remember that it is not our fault that we have a feeling. We didn't cause that feeling. It was an outside stimulus that caused that feeling. And if our thought is come onto that feeling and made some scenario around it, well, that is because of our conditioning, our upbringing, our learning about what to do about these things or what not to do about these things, come through what we've been told, what we've picked up, what is the character that we have. And that is a different thing. So there is a big difference. So we need to know feelings are one thing, thoughts are another. That don't block the feelings, and as regards thoughts, you will get to know there is a difference in the feeling between a thought which is, oh, will this continue? Will it make me ill? That is all abstract. It is all kind of the mind trying to come up with some solutions, which it doesn't really have the answers to. What has got the solutions is our presence. It knows what to do. It always knows what to do. We don't have to intellectually think about what to do to go for a pee, because our presence knows that we need to go for a pee. It's like with the driving example I gave with my dad. We get to know what to do as we're driving, so we more or less become an autopilot. Excuse me. So nowadays, in fact, I went on a walk this morning, and it was on a tight path, and it was a bit muddy, and it started to drizzle a little bit, and somebody was trying to get past us, and I moved out of the way, and something was said. So I said, "Can you get by me?" And they said, "Yes, no problem." And that that shows my age. I get a bit annoyed about this, because this happens in cafes and what have you, where you say, "Oh, could I have some hot milk?" Or could you pass me some sugar? And they do, and they say, "No problem." Well, I feel like saying, well, is it a problem? Am I causing you a problem? Or should it be a problem? All I'm doing is asking you for some hot milk or sugar. So it is just kind of, why not say it's okay if it's not a problem? Why should it be a problem? And I'm getting round to saying, why should a problem be a problem? It is us that make it a problem. And so let's have a look at this in one or two ways. That if things happened, that we have, as I mentioned, a feeling in the real world, it has happened, and it brings us energy up in us that either please us or upset us. But even if it upsets us, it is no good saying that shouldn't have happened. The thing is, the fact that it has happened cannot be denied or rejected, because it has. And if we kind of, sit there and say, well, this shouldn't have happened, and start raging against it, all we're going to do is raise our blood pressure, get upset, make that non-problem, which it really is, into a problem. So there's a difference in seeing that we will have a natural reaction to something, to this energy that comes up in us when something happens in the real world, and we get a natural, automatic reaction to it. That is natural. Just accept that, let it pass through you. What you've got to see here is that you need to caveat our thoughts around it, because our individual lens of conditioning may mean that our thoughts do not give us a good perspective on what to do, certainly in that moment. So we may be abiding to stick into a story we may have about something similar and say, oh, well, we won't do that again because it caused a problem last time. I was once bitten badly when I was a young man on the leg by a dog. And for ages, I was always I walked across the other side of the road if somebody came towards me with a dog, and I constantly was going across the road, until I realised that this was just a story now in my mind that I needed to drop, and I did. And as soon as I dropped it, this is it. As soon as I stopped focusing my attention on a problem, that problem dissipates. In other words, when we stop thinking a particular thought about something, we open the door to other thoughts coming in, because that's what happens naturally with us. If we stop concentrating on a particular thought about something, because it's upset us, for example, and we then leave the door open for new, fresh, and hopefully, possibly better thoughts to come along. And you cannot say, oh, another bad thought's going to come along, because we cannot decide what thoughts are going to... we don't have the agenda. We don't have the ability to do that. That is not in us. Thoughts come along as they see fit. And in that sense, we should not blame ourselves for that, because we don't bring it on, as it were. So... I suppose to sum this up, I'm saying that we need to shift away from a me take on a you take on any particular situation, and go back to our, in other words, when I say me, our particular character as a view on things, our upbringing as a view on things, our conditioning, our ego as a view on things. But and that can give us, we're looking through our lens of our eyes at any situation, and we have a take on that because we've got a dog in the fight, as it were. It matters to us, and once it starts mattering to us, then we're held by it and kept by it. And and if we stick with it, it magnifies itself. Instead of saying, hang on a minute, just let this kind of not percolate around in my thought system, but let's kind of do something else, like sniff the breeze, or change the record, as it were, shift away from thinking, maybe coming back into our body, which is saying, what am I doing? I'm walking down the street here, going for a cup of coffee and thinking a distraction. I know it is. Oh, I wonder what the coffee will be like. I wonder if there's anybody in the cafe today. In other words, take ourselves away from that thought system into our own presence. We will find that things do start to settle. So, in other words, what I'm saying is we're giving ourselves less attachment to any particular stories that we may have about stuff. And that is, in a way, challenging any beliefs that we may have about things. Beliefs about people shouldn't talk to me like this should have happened by now. Any beliefs, well, what I'm saying is a belief is a kind of a construct which is abstract, and it is not. It is made up by your mind, and your mind psychologically doesn't know how to deal with your mind doesn't know how to deal with psychological problems. It doesn't, because it will predict things in the future, and it's not very good at that. And it is good at bringing back up the past, which is it does. So, what we're going to do? If something upsets us, are we going to collapse in a heap, try not to think about it, get busy with something that I've just mentioned, distract ourselves? I would say, and I hope this is helpful, that real distraction is something telling you not to listen to your thoughts. In other words, because distraction is just taking your thoughts off something, which is a good thing. Go to the pictures, watch, listen to a record, go and talk to a friend. In other words, get away from your problem. But there is a natural thing in us if we go quiet to it. In other words, don't keep with the problem. that the tap on the shoulder is, don't listen to it. And we have that ability to do that, to park it somewhere else. Now, we all get upset, and I think getting upset is a wake-up call to something. Now, when I was a young man, I used to do technical drawing, and one of the instruments I use is called a set square. That's a set square. And it's got a particular angle. I think that's 30 degrees. And we used to put it on a T-square and draw lines at 30 degrees and what have you. And that's 60 degrees. But I used to use this as a ruler, not this particular one. So the particular one was when I was a very young man and had to go to night class. I got myself a set square and had it for years. Had it before I was married, then I got married and had kids. And you still use this at night class and in my job when I was working, because I did some drafting work. So at one time I did in the drawing office. Excuse me. Anyway, fast forward to when I had kids, 2 daughters. And one of my daughters, I was having an argument with, was really upsetting me. And I was trying to do some work. And I had this, not this one, the old one, in my hand. And I got so annoyed with my daughter, I smashed it on the table, this meaning this. I mean, I think it was a substitute for not hitting my daughter. I knew I couldn't do it. I shouldn't do that. I'm not saying I never hit her. It's in those days we did smack kids. I know it's wrong, but I apologise. But anyway, I smashed this on the table, and because of the plastic then, it shattered. And my immediate reaction was, you wasn't worth that. And what I meant was, I was saying to myself and to my daughter, look, now I've broken my favourite instrument, because afterwards I had to buy a new one, and I got this one that I've got now, and I've hardly used it since, actually. And this was nice clearance. In fact, it was much better. But it was like not an heirloom, but it was a thing that I'd had from being a youngster. And it was smashed. And I just said, you're not worth it. And funnily enough, my mother was in the room. My wife and my mother were in the room. And my mother said to me, that's just what your father would have said. So I think it's more than an intellectual thing. It might be a hereditary thing, that I got annoyed in the same way that my father did. But I looked at it and, I thought, well, if my dad had said, you're not worth it, that's the secret. It wasn't worth getting upset about, because now I'd lost my rag, I'd smashed my favourite set square, and so what was that all about? I mean, who was kind of the loser there? I caught myself in the act of getting too attached to things, and that's what I mean with beliefs we have. We get attached to them. This shouldn't happen, that shouldn't happen, this should go this way, that, and so I think that is a good lesson, is saying it's not worth it. Because the problem is, well, it's not a real problem, is it? If it's in thought, if you're thinking about a problem, it's a made-up thing. It's your particular way of looking at things. Other people might not see it that way. And if it is real, like you've just been sacked, yeah, okay. Are you going to kind of lay in collapse in a heap for the rest of your life and not get on with things because of that problem? Or are you going to say, well, they are not worth it, I am worth more than that, I'm going to pull myself up by my socks and do something about it? So in other words, there is a way in which we can kind of not keep with a particular bad thought because it's not helping us. And going back to the 1960s, I suppose, there was a comedy series there with a comedian woman called Hilda Baker. And she had a stooge, a taller woman who never said anything, looked pretty gormless. And Hilda Baker, who was a short comedian, a northern comedian. She used to look up at this woman who was stood next to her, who never said anything, and again looked a bit gormless. And she used to say, "She knows, you know." She used to look up at it and say, "She knows, you know." And the tall woman, just the only kind of thing she ever did was she'd give a kind of reverent nod as if, "Yes, I do know." And so the way I used to laugh at that, because what was being said was, she might look daft, but she's not blinking daft. In fact, she's just the opposite. And I'm translating this into saying that we're not daft, none of us. We really know. We know when we're looking at problems. Say we're watching a scary horror film. We know the unreality of that. It might make us jump in particular scenes when a skeleton falls out of a cupboard and somebody plunges a knife into somebody. But, and we may jump, but they're at the back of us. We know in our mind of minds, as it were, we know that it's not real. We know we're watching a film. And when you get to see this, then you see it's the same thing as your life, that you're giving too much input, too much importance, too much attachment, that you give it or I give it to a particular thing, which is not worth it because it's not really true. It is not reality in that sense. We don't have to rise to that. We know better. She knows, you know. So in reality, what I'm saying is that we are so much more than what our mind tells us, and our mind can frighten us. And after all, bless it, it's only trying to help us. But in trying to help us, and it does this by, you better get off your backside and do something about it. But in actual fact, we do get up our backside and do things about things because our self, the inner self, knows what to do anyway. So you are your presence, and it has everything you need, and it knows what to do. So I hope that's been helpful. Yes, I like that. Happiness isn't not being smart enough to know what to worry about, and me, losing my paddy over a daft argument, which I can't even remember now, which made me slam stuff on the table and break things, Not worth it. Not worth it. Okay, let's have some relaxation now. So we'll start off with some box breathing. And by that I mean just settle down in your chair now and breathing for 4. Breathe in 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Breathe out 2, 3, 4. Breathe in 2, 3, 4. Breathe out 2, 3, 4. Breathe in 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Breathe out 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. So just breathe naturally now and just relax in your chair. Just relaxing from the top of your scalp. Just noticing it's softened and your brow is soft, and just relaxing down through your face. Soft cheeks, just calming down. Soft neck, down through relaxed shoulders. Down easy on the chest, that's right. Upper arms, just relax, all the muscles relaxing. Forearms relaxed, muscles relaxing. Down gently through your chest, easy to your hips, nice and relaxed, going down to your bottom on the chair, sat there relaxed. Relaxed through your hips and your thighs, relaxing. Relax through your calves and your ankles, right down, very down, right lazy down to the tips of your toes, so easy and relaxed, so calm, having gone down through your body on that scan, just relax and carefree, just feeling relaxed having gone down. That's very nice. And just to remember that today's society can cause us a lot of stress, especially with the social media nowadays, occupying our attention. And if we give it our attention, it can stress us. And it's okay saying stress is invisible, which is true. In our minds, we make it into a big thing that can upset us. We worry. And that can make us ill, mentally and physically. But a lot of this can be avoided by seeing and understanding certain things. And as I've said, it helps if you see the distinction between thought and feelings, that feelings are natural reaction to what is going on directly in front of us, something we see or hear or smell or taste. That's natural. And to think we shouldn't have certain feelings like anger, rage, fear, no, it's just a natural thing. What becomes the problem is that when we start thinking about it all, our thoughts about our feelings, because really our thought, our mind hasn't got any good answers. All I could say here is that if we can refrain from scratching our noodle as to looking for solutions, is not to do that, because if we refrain from doing that and going up into our head about it, then answers start to come, because they are there, because our self, and I'm talking about inner self, our presence, our awareness, knows what to do. All that getting up on our mind about stuff will age us, worry us, scare us, and often force us into doing things which we later regret. So just go with that flow. And that's what I mean by that. When we get out of our mind, we go into the flow of life, the nowness of life. Because this thing only can relate to the past and what the future might be. It is never in the flow. It is never in the now. It is the judge. It always looks at what's happened. It is not present. What is present is our presence, our us now, here and now. The mind can't deal with that. It's got to have a reference point. And often the reference point is based on something that, say, gypped us up in the past, and it's triggered us again. And if we're not careful, because this is all the mind knows how to do, is we do make the same mistakes over and over again, because we're referring to something which can only work off what it knows, and that's natural. Don't blame it. It's trying its best. But there is something called wisdom, intuition, and knowing that comes from just kind of paying less attention, not getting embroiled with the problem. And I'm not saying, I'm going to put it, I'm not saying we shouldn't get embroiled, because we're human, we have feelings, and I've just said they are correct. Let the feelings give you the answers. They do. You'll know what to do. You'll know, basically, because those feelings, because they are coming from our real self, we'll know what to do in terms of love and caring, helping, kindness. That's what life is made of, because it wants to thrive and it wants to help others thrive because it knows we are all the same. So that's what I mean. We'll always know what to do because that always kicks in. Our automatic system kicks in. And we can rely upon that. And it is kind. It is not blocking off things and saying that shouldn't have happened. Just the opposite, in fact. Just the opposite. So that's been helpful. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And I hope to see you again. So, the old Yorkshire saying by George Formby, I think it was, it's turned out nice again. I hope it's turned out nice for you. Thank you very much.